I only wish there were more FBI agents there, more federal agents there. There was only one. And he didn't do too well against me. I have to say that. But come on, you mean to tell me 23 years, you've never seen any FBI agent do things that were, very questionable? And I said to him, I've never, in 5 trials of my own, in 3 of my dad's, and others that I participated in, I've never seen a paid informant, and I've seen multitudes of the dozens of them, get on the stand, left hand on the Bible, right hand swear to tell the truth, and then not lie. They're being paid. But a street guy? You're gonna pay him? Paid informants have much incentive to lie. You watch how some of these officers responded. They tried to defend it. But again, in a way, they're just on a different level. They don't understand the way the feds work. Now, a lot of people in the comments, I gotta tell you, they say that I crushed these guys. Tell me what you think. Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. As always, my friends, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to our God for that. Hope you're all doing well. There's a very interesting social media platform called Jubilee. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it's very, very interesting in that it will take one person in a certain field and put them in the middle of 20 people that are in a different field and oppose their point of view in whatever the situation may be. Very high profile people have been on that, like Jordan Peterson, Patrick Bet-David, a number of people. And it's really very interesting because you're against 20 people, the one person against 20. Liberals against conservatives, Gen Z against another generation. Really cool. Doing it a long time. They got a big platform. I think 10 million followers and God knows how many views. Well, they approached me and they wanted me to sit in the middle of 20 law enforcement people. So I agreed. I thought it would be fun. I can't wait, right, to get with law enforcement people and hear their opposing views. So they asked me to come up with 4 questions. They gave me a bunch of choices and they said, pick 4. And then we're going to do this thing. So we did it and it was great. I had a great time. I can tell you this. They had 20 law enforcement people. There was only one FBI agent. Most of them were local police. And I have to say this, now please understand where I'm coming from. They didn't have the background or experience that I had on the street with the feds and with all the multitude of investigations that I've had, both on myself, my dad, and obviously people around. They didn't have the experience that I had with certain levels of law enforcement. So it was kind of, I don't know if you want to say they were at a disadvantage. I'm going to let you choose. You can go to Jubilee, watch it, and see what you think. I think overwhelmingly, most people in the comments, and up until the last I looked, there was 7,000 or 8,000 comments. It's already got over 1 million views. Most people think that I did pretty well against them. I'm going to say it like that. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to watch it, but I want to give you my reaction to some of this because these are very important questions that I pose. I only wish there were more FBI agents there, more federal agents there. There was only one. And he didn't do too well against me. I have to say that. And he was an honest guy. He certainly appeared to be an honest guy. And he talked about how upright and honest the FBI was and how they had to follow the rules and how he never saw them go outside, of the rules and policies that the FBI has to take. Never saw them break the law. They always played it straight. Well, obviously, I disagree with that, and we got into it, and I think he was getting pretty offended. You'll watch it. But let me go to the first question, and I'm going to get into it, and I want to see if you agree with me. Why don't you be the people now and give me your comments? Tell me what you think about these questions. Go watch Jubilee. I'm sure my team's going to put some clips up here with people that I was up against. And let me know what your thoughts are. I think we'll have some fun with it. All right, let me stop you for a second because if you want real success in 2026, you can't do what everyone else is doing. Common sense. You can't rely on motivation alone. You can't wait for January revolutions that fade by February. And you definitely can't learn everything you need from YouTube. That's out of the question. Starting in 2026, I'm taking my most important lessons. Real strategies, real mindset, real discipline. I'm taking them off this platform and into my private community and school. This is the stuff that helped me go from the life I was living, and you know what that was all about, to building lasting success on the outside. I'm 74 years old. Gotta say, there's been some success. No algorithms, no filters, just honest conversations about business, about life, and what it actually takes to win the right way. If 2026 is the year you stop talking about change and you start living it, you want to be in the room with people who are serious about doing the same thing. You can join us at michaelfranzese.com/family. Now let's get back to it. The first question was, I said undercover operatives, whether they police or FBI or whatever, often manufacture crimes when they're out to get somebody. Now, they all disagreed with that. Every single one of them. And you know, the way the format is, they have about 20 minutes for each question, and they raise their hands, you'll see it, and then they have to run to the chair. And whoever sits down, that's who I talk with, right? So most all of them disagreed with this. And I told them, I said, you people are wrong. You know, and we talked about sting operations. Now, here's the deal. When you get an undercover agent or an informant, and their sole purpose is to come in and trap somebody, get them to go along with a crime, what I stated to them is they are manufacturing the crime. Even in the case of an informant, because the informant now becomes a government agent. He's working for the government. He may not have the badge, he may not have taken the oath, but he's working for the government. So he is now a government agent. And you're sending this government agent specifically to induce somebody into criminal activity. So you're manufacturing a crime. That's it. And they were saying to me, well, you know, you could have said no. I said, I agree with that. Or anybody could say no. The criminal, the alleged criminal could say no. That's true. However, if you didn't manufacture the crime and bring it to him, he would have nothing to say no to. So you're actually creating a criminal activity and you're inducing him to do it. So you're manufacturing a crime that he didn't know about before you brought it to him. So what I kept saying is you're manufacturing a crime, and that's wrong. Even if you believe this person is a criminal, and you might suspect that he's doing criminal things in the case of organized crime, okay. If he's a John Gotti or a Sonny Franzese or anybody that you name, or even me, you believe that we're engaged in criminal activity. Okay. Well, then why don't you catch us doing what you believe we're doing? You can't send somebody in, manufacture a crime, bring a crime into their presence that they would have never known about before, and say, if you do it, it's not entrapment. Yes, it is. You're entrapping that person. You're bringing him a criminal situation that wouldn't have existed if the government agent didn't present it to him. So my argument is you're manufacturing a crime. And they kept saying, well, you could say no. I said, I know that. But if you didn't bring it to him, there'd be nothing to say no to. So if you trap him and he goes along with it, well, you created the crime. You entrapped him. And I kept saying that, and they kept saying no. And I think if you watch it, you'll see that I think I made my points. I really do. And I'd love to hear what you have to say. Once again, there would be no criminal activity if you didn't bring it to him. Well, they might be doing something else. Okay, well, then go get them for what you suspect they're doing. You have all the tools, all the weapons, all the money, all the resources. Why must you bring him a crime? Why must you try to entrap him in a crime? Why don't you use your surveillance and whatever other, resources you have and catch him doing what he would have been doing without you entrapping him, if you believe that? And that was my point. And most of them, their main argument was, well, you could say no. And I kept saying, but there would be nothing to say no to if you didn't bring the crime, if you didn't try to entrap him. It absolutely is entrapment. And I'm sorry, I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. Because let me ask you this. Okay, organized crime. Some people might say, well, it's okay. I say no. Because like I said, if you believe this person is involved in criminal activity, well, go find it. Investigate him the right way. Use all your resources. But what if law enforcement just didn't like somebody? Didn't like him. Bad guy, just didn't like him, whatever, for whatever reason. Well, now he sends somebody in. Maybe he knows that this person is struggling financially. So he sends somebody in, gets friendly with him. That's what these informants do. Cozy up to him a little bit. Oh, you got no money? You know what? Nobody's going to tell. I got a way for us to make some money. And boom, the guy bites. And before you know it, he's involved in a crime that he would have never been involved in if the government didn't present it and try to entrap him. And the worst part about it is the government agent who would participate in the crime, he gets a free pass. He gets a free pass. I don't think that's a good method. I'm sorry. I don't think that that's what law enforcement should be doing. Try to entrap criminals. And I've always said this. If you give law enforcement an inch, they're going to take a yard. If you think that they're going to do it only against suspected lawbreakers, you're wrong. They'll do it against anybody they want. They will set up traps for anybody that they want. Now, law enforcement, oh, we don't do that. Oh, yes, you do. I know for a fact that you do. I've lived it. I've experienced it. I can spend the rest of this whole video and more, hours and hours and hours, telling about people that I know were presented with situations that they would have never got involved in. Informants in organized crime do it all the time. They're paid informants. They wire themselves up. They induce somebody into committing a crime. They're entrapping them. That's my argument. And I believe if you look at the Jubilee and listen to some of the officers, I think, that I got it. And let me tell you this, before I go any further, I'm not against law enforcement. I'm just against some of the tactics that they use. We need law enforcement. We need the FBI. We need law enforcement. I just question some of their tactics, especially when they're using it against their enemies. We've seen them use it against their political enemies also. You got to understand. Watch, what I did with the FBI agent. He was really getting offended. He seemed like a nice guy, but come on. You mean to tell me that you're retired now, but 23 years, you've never seen any FBI agent do things that were, very questionable? I'll be kind about it. Of course you did. Don't say that. I asked him about Comey. He said Comey was upstanding, a man of integrity. Give me a break. You lost me right then and there. Even if you were one of those guys, and maybe I believe you were a good guy, you played by the rules. Don't tell me that Comey played by the rules. Comey was totally political. He goes all the way back to the days of organized crime in New York. He helped set up people. A bad guy. Him and that prosecutor Weissman that put people in situations. Bad guy. I've mentioned his name before. So I want you to look at that again. It was undercover operatives often manufacture crimes. I believe that I got my point across on this one. My second one was, does law enforcement believe it okay to violate the law in order to arrest a lawbreaker? And I said that law enforcement shouldn't be allowed to violate the law. No, they're the lawmakers. They're the ones that go out and get the lawbreakers. They're not allowed to break the law in order to catch the lawbreakers. But in the case of informants, that's what they're doing, because remember, those informants become government operatives. They're working for the government. They don't have the badge, they don't have the shield, but they're working for the government. All right? But police officers, FBI agents, I can give you a situation where Lynn Del Vecchio, rogue FBI agent, John Connolly, rogue FBI agent with Whitey Bulger. They broke the law all the time. Lynn Del Vecchio, FBI agent, was complicit in 4 to 5 murders with Greg Scarpa. He was a lawbreaker. And they do it quite often in the case of organized crime or other groups out there that they want to get. I don't think it's right. They're not allowed to break the law. They're the defenders of the law. They're not supposed to break it. Once again, they got all the resources. They got all the money. They got all the time. They got everything on, and they got the laws on their side. Why do they need to break the law? Are they lazy? Are they just so aggressive, so opportunistic that they need to do that? So, they claim that they never do that. It's against the law, to go past the red light. It's against the law to speed. In that case, should you be allowed to do it to catch a lawbreaker? I say, yeah. And then some of them said, well, we're not allowed to do that. Yes, you are. You are allowed to do that. You're allowed. They're not going to arrest a cop who's going after a lawbreaker because he's speeding or because he passed a red light. And somebody was arguing with me about that. I said, come on, man. Nobody's going to arrest you for that. You can do it. You know that. But that's a different situation. We understand that. You're going after a criminal. But you shouldn't be allowed to set people up. You shouldn't be allowed to break the law in order to go after a lawbreaker. Again, you got all the resources. If you can't do it the right way, the criminal is either really good or you're really ineffective. Because again, if you believe this person is committing a crime, well then you sit on it, you do your thing legally, use all the legal tactics that you have available to you, and there are many, and go out and get this criminal. You should do it. You should not be allowed to break the law in order to get the lawbreaker. I want to hear your comments. Give me a situation, because I know you will. Well, let's say this guy is a serial killer. He's a serial killer, which is despicable. And we just can't trap him. Well, why can't you? Why not? Why can't you? And what would you do to break the law in order to get him? Would you, I don't know this situation. Obviously, I don't know well, I did know a serial killer, in Roy DeMeo and probably Greg Scarpa, but, I just don't think it's right. I'm sorry, some of you may disagree with me on that, but again, if you give the government an inch, they will take a yard, and before you know it, they'll start using it in the wrong way, against the wrong people, against their enemies, their political enemies, whatever. You're not allowed to do that. You have the laws, you create the laws, you enforce the laws, you're not allowed to break the laws. That's my opinion. You can disagree. I think in this particular situation, you'll see who I debated here. If you go to that, I think I got him on this too. Now, a lot of people in the comments, I got to tell you, they say that I crushed these guys. I don't want to, I want you to form that opinion. Tell me what you think when you watch it. Okay, let's go on. Number 3, law enforcement often measures success by arrests and not by safer streets. Now, they took this personal, because what I'm saying is, look, in many cases, depending upon who the target of the investigation is, law enforcement is more concerned with getting that person than making the streets safer. They want the arrest. They want the indictment. It's big for them. It's a feather in their cap. They get promoted in situations like this. And again, in speaking to these cops, I was a little above their heads because I was talking about what the FBI's tactics are mainly, what the federal tactics are, and how obviously they would move heaven and earth to get a John Gotti. And not because John Gotti was the worst person in the world. He wasn't. There were other guys on the street a lot worse than John Gotti. He may have presented himself in such a way that people thought he was the worst, but he wasn't. I'm telling you right now, Roy DeMeo's, the Greg Scarpas, the other guys were worse than John Gotti. Worse than John Gotti, trust me. But John Gotti was the name. He thumbed his nose in the face of the government. He was a big name. So they want to move heaven and earth to get John Gotti. The heck with everything else that's going on. We got to get Gotti. Yeah, we'll give informants money. Maybe informants that are a lot worse than John because he's got the name. I nailed John Gotti. It's big. I'll become a federal judge. And by the way, John Gleason, who prosecuted John Gotti successfully, did become a federal judge. He got a judgeship as a result of that. Wrote a book as a result of that. Fame, it brought him a lot. Big deal. You bring down Sonny Franzese, big deal. You bring down, Fat Tony Salerno, the commission case, big deal. Are the streets much safer because you nailed those guys? Come on. A lot more stuff going on, than that. Some of you may disagree again, but what I'm saying is when there is a name involved that can help law enforcement, promotion, whatever, that becomes paramount in their minds. That's my opinion. It's my belief. Let's have some good conversation about it. Don't get mad. Let's have some good dialogue. These are important matters. Who knows? It could impact one of you one day, or a family member, or a friend. You don't know. Law enforcement must be kept in check, people. You want to talk about anarchy? I know people are, in the last couple of years, we've heard about fascism and anarchy and everything else, and nobody's above the law. Well, the way to make sure that we're not anarchists or fascists is to make sure that the people that are there to enforce the laws don't break the laws. That's how you ensure it. Laws are made for a reason, and policies and rules and regulations that law enforcement people have to follow are there for our protection, and they must be held accountable to that. Otherwise, that's when you have anarchy. You know, that's when you have rogue stuff going on. When law enforcement feels they can do whatever they want. Oh, nobody's going to say anything. We can bend the rules a little bit. This is a big name, means a lot for us. No, your job is to keep the streets safer. That's your job. You know, the hypocrisy that came on, you know, in the last several years with all of these illegal criminal migrants. I'm going to make it clear. These illegal criminal migrants that factually, we have a lot of evidence to that, came into this country and wreaked havoc in many ways, took over apartment complexes, and killed young girls, went into stores and robbed them. And we were paying them to do it. We put them on, taxpayers were paying for this. It was despicable what happened. The streets weren't safer. No, they weren't safer. Well, now, Michael, let me ask you, was it okay if law enforcement would break the law to go after these people? No. They shouldn't have been here in the first place. They broke the law by being allowed to come into this country. They shouldn't have been here. This is politics' fault. This is the administration's fault. They shouldn't be here in the first place. They allowed that to happen. But once they're here, no, you can't break the law to go after the lawbreakers. And I say that consistently, and I'm sorry, but sometimes people in law enforcement, they have their targets. You know, with organized crime, let me tell you how it works. Normally, a crime is committed, and the police or the law enforcement people investigate the crime and go out and arrest the lawbreakers, those that participated in that criminal activity. That's how it goes. Crime is created, investigate, arrest. Not with organized crime. With organized crime, they investigate the person and they try to look for the crime that he's committing. Different. They investigate the person and then look for the crime. And if they can't find the crime or get him on that crime, that's when they'll try to entrap that person. And please don't tell me it doesn't happen. It happens all the time. With paid informants, with undercover investigations, it happens all the time. Trust me on that. I can give you a million cases, or some exaggerating, a multitude of cases where that's occurred. I'm fighting for somebody right now who deserves his sentence to be either commuted or he deserves a pardon. He's done 33 years and he shouldn't be in prison because law enforcement bent the rules in their favor. Not only bent them, broke the rules in their favor. And as a result, they destroyed somebody's life and his family. It's wrong. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. They should be held accountable. Okay, let's move on to the last one. Number 4. Oh, this one was really, this one for me is not good. Paid informants are rarely reliable. I will say that with 100% certainty. Let me tell you something, people. When you're paying somebody to go out and entrap somebody, why would you think they're not going to be? These are street people. These are criminals. That's their mindset already. They're already trying to get over you. Oh, I can make some money. All I have to do is deliver this. Of course they're going to lie. It's common sense. Why would they not lie? You're paying them. You're telling them they're not going to go to jail or they're going to get a reduced sentence. And you mean to tell me that's the way to get somebody to be reliable? Please. It doesn't even make sense. It's not even sensible at all. And yet they defended it. Well, you know, why do you have to compensate these people? Why? They can understand, well, you know what, I had a change of heart and you know, they didn't treat me right, so I did this and all that nonsense. They're getting paid and they don't want to go to jail. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. They can say anything that they want. Oh, they didn't treat me right. What do you mean they didn't treat you right? You're a criminal. You're in the street. You think things always go well? No. You willingly joined this organization. Don't tell me they stabbed you in the back. This is what the life is about. There's betrayal quite often. So don't now start blaming that. You got paid for this. And you got a reduced sentence, and you got perks, and you got incentives, and you got benefits from it. That's why you're taking the stand. Come on, it's so obvious. And yet people said, no, that's not true. They asked me, one guy asked me, and I said to him, I've never, in 5 trials of my own, 5, in 3 of my dad's, and others that I participated in, I've never seen a paid informant, and I've seen multitudes of the dozens of them get on the stand, left hand on the Bible, right hand swear to tell the truth, and then lie through their teeth. They're being paid. They're given incentive. They're not going to prison. Why would you think a street guy who's a criminal anyway would not be induced to lie? Why all of a sudden are they telling the truth? You know how many times witnesses get on the stand? Oh yeah, I lied that time. I lied that time. And I lied that time. But now I'm telling the truth. And juries, for some reason, believe them. I don't get it. You know, if you lie and you lie and you lie, why would we believe that you're telling the truth now? You know, look, I got to diverse here. Same thing I say with the government. If the government has lied to you once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, why would you put your trust in them a 5th time? I've said that many times. Why would you do it? If they consistently lie, why are they going to tell you the truth now? You should reject that out of hand. I'm sorry. That's how I feel. Paid informants have much incentive to lie. There's no question about it. I don't like the habit. I don't like the practice. I don't think it should be done. You watch how some of these officers responded. They tried to defend it. But again, you know, in a way, they're just on a different level. They don't understand, they didn't understand the way the feds worked. Many of them never worked undercover. I don't know if they had experience with paying informants. Again, watch Jubilee and watch, you know, some of the examples that we put up here in the film. They just didn't get it. And in a way, I'm glad, you know, if these cops that are working the beat and doing these investigations on the street for street level crime, if they really believe that this stuff is not happening and they're not doing it, I'm happy. I'm happy about it. I don't want to see them do it. And I'm glad, you know, they tried to defend some of these things in a way, but it fell short. It fell short. I want to go over this again. Remember this, people, because this is for your benefit also. It really is. Remember what I said. You can never give the government the opportunity to break the law in order to go after the lawbreakers. I'll say it again. They have all the tools and weapons on their side. They shouldn't be allowed to pay informants to do their bidding. Why? Why would you give them that incentive to lie? These are street people. They're not fine, upstanding citizens. You know what? If it were a doctor, a lawyer, a legitimate person that really, you know, was cooperating, you probably wouldn't have to pay them because they're just good people to begin with, or legally minded people to begin with. They're not criminals. So they're going to get on and they could be very credible. But a street guy, you're going to pay him? You're going to promise him, don't worry about it. You know, we're going to set you up. We're going to put you in a witness protection program. We'll give you some money. We'll cut your time in prison or no prison at all. And then think that they're going to be up there. Oh, wow, this is great. I'm going to tell the truth. Come on. Doesn't even make sense. They don't know the street at all if that's what they believe. You should not be allowed to pay informants. I'm sorry. If you can't get these people, if you can't scare them into doing the right thing by saying, hey, you're going to jail forever. You either get up there and tell the truth, and if I catch you in a lie, okay, you're going down. So either you get your act straight and tell the truth, and if you don't know anything, don't offer any information. That's what you got to tell them. Eventually you'll get some people. Might take you a little bit longer, but you'll get some people because those people will screw up. But once they screwed up and they got something hanging over their head, like jail time, what do you got to pay them for also? Doesn't make sense. It's not a good tool. It's a good tool for the government. Yeah, great. But they're creating lies and they're creating liars. And it's happened time after time after time, and it will continue to happen. Can't do that. Again, does law enforcement believe it's okay to violate the order in order to arrest a lawbreaker? Absolutely not. No way. Undercover ops often manufacture crime? Absolutely. I think you have to agree with me on this point. No question about it. I don't care what the officers say. And then law enforcement offers measures success by arrests and not by safer streets. And look, let me tell you that I think there are many good cops out there. I'm not trying to, you know, paint all cops as bad. Not at all. We need law enforcement. I am very supportive of the police. But to say that these things don't happen is just wrong. You know, look, we want our cops. They have a rough job. There's no question about it, especially in these tough cities. Chicago, Minneapolis now. Look what these poor cops are going through. Chicago, look what they got to go through. LA, tough. It's a tough assignment. There's no question about it. And most of them are on the level and they play it straight. There's no question about it. And they should continue to play it straight. And they'll be effective if they're given the resources and they're given the support by these politicians, these dumb politicians that want to, decrease their presence on the streets. They're the ones at fault. They are. And law enforcement has to be held to a certain standard. And it comes from the top. If that top tells them, hey, we're going to give you all the resources you need, go out and do your job the right way, they'll be effective. So, I really want to hear what you have to say. People, I am a bug about this. I really am, because I guess, everything I've been through. Look, I've been arrested 18 times. I can say this, the 5 times that I went to trial, I wasn't guilty. And that's why they all resulted either in an acquittal or a dismissal. I was never convicted at trial. I wasn't guilty, but I was a major target. And they did send undercover informants in. And I have to say, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to go against my own thought here. There was one massive undercover investigation against me. The lead law enforcement person, FBI agent at the time, was a guy by the name of Joe Spinelli. The undercover agent, a guy by the name of Victor Quintana, or Victor Guerrero. One of the two is his real name. I think it was Victor Quintana, right? And then they had also an undercover informant. Now I have to say this, and I'm going to go against what I just said. They played it straight. They really did. They didn't try to induce me to lie. They did try to put me in a situation where I would make a mistake. Fortunately, I didn't make the mistake, but they played it straight. Joe Spinelli now is a friend of mine. He was a straight shooter. I have to say that. The agent, straight shooter, he's now a friend of mine. They didn't play it dirty. So what I'm saying there is, that's an indication there are a lot of good cops, good agents out there. And I'm not trying to besmirch and throw a blanket of bad over all of them. I'm not trying to do that. But to say that it doesn't happen is just wrong. And to say that it's okay is just wrong. It should not happen. You cannot induce people, manufacture crimes in order to get a lawbreaker. You can't present them with something that they didn't know about or wouldn't have fallen into, wouldn't have been entrapped if you didn't bring it to them. You can't do that, And you have to admit that at times people go after names. They go after glory rather than trying to keep the streets safe. It happens at times. But again, in no way am I against law enforcement. I'm trying to put a balance over here because that's what I believe. But I want you to watch this Jubilee and let me know what you think. And, if you have any of these are interesting topics. Unfortunately, people, in the last several years, we've seen the FBI become very politicized. When I brought this up to the FBI agent, he disagreed with me. He said that's not true. He said Comey was a straight shooter. No, he's not. He absolutely isn't. There are a lot of prosecutors out there that don't play it straight. They just don't. And we have to keep that under wraps. We can't let that happen, because that's when all the talk about fascism and anarchy, that's when it happens. When you let law enforcement go out of control, that's when it happens. When you let them bend the rules to their satisfaction, to their benefit, that's when it happens. Because again, remember what I'm telling you. You give them an inch, they'll take a yard. You let them get away with things, it'll just keep going. You have to hold these people accountable. I've said this. This is the year of accountability, 2026. I am pounding on these politicians that have defrauded us, on these politicians that have just treated us like garbage. They have in Minnesota, in California. Watch what's going to come out in California. How they just mistreated taxpayers. And then they get up there, it's got me now. I don't know if you know what's happening in Virginia. The new governor of Virginia, who campaigned, she's a Democrat, campaigned as a centrist, and immediately comes into office and starts to talk about DEI. She immediately goes far left. She lied throughout her campaign, immediately goes far left, She wants to raise taxes. This is what drives me crazy. I always say this. These irresponsible politicians who have defrauded us. We're seeing it in Minnesota, California. You're going to see it everywhere. The way they want to solve their problems is by raising our taxes. They created the problem, and they want to come back at us to solve the problem that they created by abusing us. These people have to be held accountable. I'm going to say this now. The Clintons, Hillary and Bill, they get a subpoena. You know what a subpoena is? It's a demand and order to appear. To appear in front of Congress. They say, the hell with you, we're not coming. Nothing happened to them. They're still walking the streets. Let that happen to you or to me. Within 2 hours, the FBI will be at our doorstep and we'll be in jail for contempt of court. You have to answer a subpoena. They didn't even bother to show up. They're still walking the streets. And they talk about nobody is above the law. Well, explain that. What does that mean? You got a subpoena. It's a demand to appear, not a choice, not a preference, not a if you want to. It's a demand to appear, a legal demand to appear. And if you don't, you're held in contempt. Well, what happened? Bill Clinton is a former president. They locked up Donald Trump, right? He was a former president. They locked him up, 4 or 5 times? Why not Bill Clinton? But nobody is above the law until it's them. All these people, no accountability. So when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to politicians, we must hold them accountable. Nobody, and I stress that, nobody is above the law. Not even the lawmakers, not even the law enforcers. Nobody is above the law. And it's not pick and choose when or where. It's the answer is, or the statement is, nobody is above the law. Anybody that violates the law should be held accountable. Period. These politicians, they think who the hell they are. They are government workers. They are our public servants. They don't deserve any special privileges. Who the hell are they? They work for us. You pay their salary. And by paying their salary, we're giving them the opportunity to rob from us. It's factual, people. It's happening every day. We're seeing it. So not only do they think that they're above the law, not only that they think they're entitled to certain things, not only are they getting paid by us, but we're putting them in a position where they can rob us again. Not the way it was supposed to be. Not what our founding fathers envisioned. But that's how it is. So, anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I know I get off a rant, but I do this for your benefit, people. You know, I'm involved in crime. I understand criminal activity. I understand law enforcement. I understand all of this. So I give you my perception for your benefit. Now, those of you that think that somehow you're going to bring Trump up, like I don't know why. Trump will be involved in this in some way. And I'm a Trump supporter, so you're going to come at me personally. I know it happens all the time. No big deal. I understand it. But why don't you deal with the subject matter? Why don't you deal with the content? Because I want to hear what you have to say. When I'm saying these things, it's for the benefit of everybody. Everybody. Holding law enforcement accountable is for everybody's benefit. Holding politicians accountable is for everybody's benefit. Not left, it's not right, it's not independent, it's for everybody. Because believe me when I tell you, if Republicans were doing it, and when they do it, I say the same thing. I wrote a book, Mafia Democracy, and in that book, I talk about Republicans and Democrats. Doesn't matter. Everybody needs to be held accountable. Nobody is above the law. And that word nobody doesn't have exceptions. Doesn't have exceptions. There are circumstances when maybe somebody is too feeble, too old, too senile, like in the case of Joe Biden. You know, when it came down, when the special counsel said he's guilty of having classified documents that he shouldn't have had. He wasn't the president. He was the vice president. He shouldn't have had them. He's guilty. But he's too old. He's too feeble. He's too senile. Nobody's going to convict him, so we're going to give him a pass. He is the president. Okay, I get it. Okay, I get it. At least everybody just overlooked that like it never happened, but he was guilty. Okay, but remember, nobody is above the law. Biden made that statement many times. Many, many times. You know what? They're hypocrites because they want to be above the law. They believe they're above the law. They believe they're entitled. And sometimes law enforcement people believe it too. We cannot allow it to happen. We must hold everybody accountable. The criminal and the legal person. The criminal and the law enforcement person and the politician and the government employee. We got to hold everybody accountable. That's the only way that society in general will benefit. I hope you enjoy it. Go watch this Jubilee. Not only mine, you'll see a bunch of them. Some very, very interesting conversations and debates, I would say. Patrick's was great. Patrick Bet-David. Jordan Peterson was great. There's a bunch of them up there, and I think you'll really like them. And tune into mine, and I hope you enjoyed this one. I really did. And we got some good things coming up. I'm going to be talking about the differences between the Mafia in Italy and Cosa Nostra here in the United States. We did a deep dive on that for all of you. You really enjoyed what I did about the the Profaci-Gallo War, Gallo-Profaci War. And we got a lot of good things coming up, some good interviews coming up. So stay tuned, people. And, I appreciate your support very much. And I really mean that, people. We got some good cooking ones coming up. I'm going to make some special recipes that we haven't talked about before. I think you're going to really enjoy them. And people have loved that, and I enjoy that. And I enjoy doing with you. And Franzese wine, I need a drink. Salute to all of you there. And that's it today. We're going to wrap it up. So how do I always leave you? Same way. Be safe. Hold everybody accountable, and the streets will be safer. Trust me on that. Be healthy. You know what I say? They say if you can live to 2030, you can live to 100 with a good quality of life. That's AI. That's all this stuff that's coming up. AI, people, you got to be into AI. If you're not into AI, you're in trouble. I'm telling you right now, the next couple of years, you're going to see it more and more. What it's doing in the medical field. Wow. What a benefit in the medical field. And in business in general, and in our daily lives in general. There's some downsides, in the labor force. We understand that. But AI is good. But you got to stay ahead of the game. You got to know what it's all about. Very, very important. Be safe. Be healthy. You know I mean this, people. God bless each and every one of you, your families, your friends, your neighborhoods, your cities, your towns. And yes, God bless America. See you next time. Tune in. The world doesn't need another wine. It really needs a reason to raise a glass again. A reason that's real. A reason that means something. Because most people, they drink to forget. We drink to remember where we came from, what we stand for, and who we still fight to become. We don't follow trends, we break them. Our bottles don't look like anyone else's because our story, it isn't like anyone else's. It's about freedom, about redemption, about family. That's what's inside every bottle. So, to the ones who think different, who live different, who drink different, salute.